It is the leadership of small island development states like Grenada that provides the moral authority and political impetus needed to spur larger nations into action. After climate talks on just transition held in Trinidad and Tobago and on loss and damage held in St. Lucia, we would like to use this event in Grenada to analyze the outcomes of the recently concluded COP30 in Belém, Brazil, and to illuminate pathways forward for effective climate change solutions.
COP30 did not solve every problem. No COP can. But it helps set the conditions for faster, broader, real economy action. Action to protect communities, strengthen economies, and improve people's lives. Across the negotiations, countries advanced outcomes that keep the Paris Agreement moving forward, bending the emissions curve further downward, and ramping up investment and implementation of bold new climate and adaptation plans. But we all know that we need to move much further and much faster. And here, the Caribbean's voice, the Caribbean's experience is so essential.
With our consistent and powerful advocacy, we've always won the moral argument, which is that we are vulnerable countries. The legal tenet that constitutes our special circumstances is well captured within international conventions and frameworks delivered through the United Nations, as well as within the Paris Agreement. And so as we consider increasing our negotiating power, we must now try to win an economic argument, which is looking at CARICOM as an investment block to help enhance our climate resilience. So when Grenada stands up and says Hurricane Beryl cost us 16.5% of our GDP, and Barbados says the same thing, and then Jamaica also speaks to its impacts of Beryl, and now Melissa, we always treat these as very separate stories. What we need to consider is how we leverage the aggregation of those stories through the lens of climate impact data into a regional economic argument. It then becomes this macroeconomic crisis that the MDBs like the World Bank and the IFIs like IMF, they cannot ignore.
I would love to see, and one of the things I think we need to do is to pull our experts together, our data analysts, and the people who are versed in research, put together whether it be a platform that is accessible, where you can go and see the different organizations, their mandates, the projects they're currently working on, projects they've completed in the past, etc., et al., right? And I think if we do that, then it would be a bit easier, because oftentimes you have organizations that does amazing work and you just don't hear about them, you just don't know about them if you don't talk to somebody about it. And again, sometimes you have organizations who are doing amazing work. You're currently going to write for a grant to do the same thing that they're already doing. And so it almost seems as though we're working in silos and not collaboratively, when we could be leveraging our strengths together as a team, unified, not just in Grenada, but throughout the entire region.
I hear this everywhere I go in the region, that data is critical, and that data collection is so important for a region that wants to work together as a whole and have a voice. So it really is. It's good that this is coming into being, and I hope it's going to be a success.
One way that we can leverage our unity as CARICOM is to look at shared technical hub within CARICOM for transparency reporting. This allows us to show the world that we can unify across the collective Caribbean countries for a harmonized approach and standard to show that we can lead on transparency tracking in climate finance. And what this does is that it removes the excuses that donors usually apply to our vulnerable countries, that our government systems cannot be trusted. And it is showing the world a level of commitment that shows of our own accountability and compliance to our pledges. If 1.5 to stay alive continues to be our clarion call, then the only way that we can survive is through effective collaboration. a single nation, we're just a single voice. And no matter how loud we speak in many of these international spaces, it's often drowned out by the noise of the larger G20 countries.
If we take the approach where we sue states individually one by one for their climate action, we may still end up in a 2.6 degree world because of the length of time that would take. And so there are definitely drawbacks. I think that even in this COP, we saw a much greater emphasis on the importance of international cooperation, and that perhaps might be a more fruitful place to exert our efforts to ensure that we can all get there.
BLM was 10 years since the Paris Agreement, 10 years. And of course, we understand what happens with the Paris Agreement in terms of people going in and out of the Paris Agreement and sucking out a lot of energy from the Paris Agreement, sucking a lot of energy out of the processor in the meantime, and sucking out a lot of monies from the processor. This is very important. The geopolitics and the assault on the science itself, IPCC as the best available science. All of this basically was part of it. So to get a solution amid all of those is a great achievement in my view. And how the reaction of the EU and Germany, again, is quite important.
We have to get everybody on board, and this includes also the oil-producing countries. That was, I think, a factor that did play in COP30 in our view. We had a lot of pushback on moving away, transitioning away from fossil fuel. And for this, we need to have everybody here on board. We need the small island development states. We need Grenada just as much as Grenada may need us. We may have more funds at our disposal, or at everybody's disposal, but you have the votes, you have the voices. And if CARICOM continues to unite and have a strong common voice, I think this would be a good thing for all of us.
Even though very many parties, especially amongst vulnerable countries, especially among small island developing states, relied heavily on the reasoning that is available now through these advisory opinions, there were, in their arguments during the COP, there were also very many parties who did not want to acknowledge those findings, who claimed that those findings were not relevant to the UN climate discussion, and who argued that they should be kept out. And so, in terms of future work on the advisory opinions, I think that they will continue to influence the positions that states adopt and the arguments that they make in these discussions. Certainly, the proposal from AOSIS for a new agenda item with a response to the NDC synthesis report was very much grounded in the ICJ perspective on the legal nature of the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit and on the importance of NDCs being responsive to that limit.
What does a successful COP look like for us in the Caribbean especially? From the special circumstances of seeds and LDCs. And how do we respect that, and how do we populate that in the COP? To me, it's all about the flow of finance from developing countries to the Caribbean. It's always had to do with the flow of finance, and not only the quantity of the finance, but also the quality of the finance, the speed, the agility, and whether or not this finance is grant-based finance or loan financing. It's quite important. So this, to me, is a critical issue. So finance for adaptation, finance for mitigation, loss and damage, capacity building, technology. It is important that we measure the success for us in the lens of financial flows into the Caribbean, into those specific areas to address, especially our resilience.
Ambition without support will falter. This is the era of implementation, and its greatest test is not the strength of our aims, but the strength of our action. So my message is simple. We have the tools, the direction is right, the progress is real, but the pace is still far too slow. These German-Caribbean climate talks are an opportunity to change that, to deepen cooperation, expand support, and turn words into real protection and real prosperity for the Caribbean and for the vulnerable communities everywhere.